P4, properties of circles. And on circles, the two main things that you will need to know is what is the center and what is the radius. And on this one, it is asking for the center, which is right here. And that is going to be at 3, 7. And this is asking what's the radius. Now the radius is from the center of the circle to the edge of the circle, the distance. And if this is at -1 and this is at +7, then our radius is 8. Now, when you're given an equation of a circle and not necessarily the graph, and it's wanting to know some information from it, then what you will need to know before we begin is an equation of the circle comes from x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, and h and k is the center, and r is the radius, not r squared, but r is the radius. And so when it's asking for the radius right here, the r squared is 25, because 25 is right here, and it's asking for the radius. And so to get the radius by itself, we're going to square root the 25, and r is 5. Okay, now the center comes from the h and the k. Now we got to be careful with the negative signs. On this one though, there aren't any parentheses, so there aren't any negatives to be worried about. So our center is going to be 0, 0. It's going to make better sense whenever we find something that's not that. And then on this one, we're asking for the center, and we look for what the h and the k are. There's not a number with the x squared, so the h is 0. And on this is a positive 8. But here, it's a negative. So basically, we just make them opposite of what they are. On this, it's asking for the diameter. To be able to figure out the diameter, we have to figure out the radius again. So if r squared equals 25, then r equals the square root of 25, which is 5. Now the diameter is 2 radius put together, so 2 times 5 is 10. This is asking for the diameter, so the diameter goes from end point to end point, so this diameter is 2. It's asking for the center, so the center is 2, -1. You just take the opposite of what's with the x and the y. What is the radius? So if your r squared is 6, then your radius is the square root of 6. We always need to make sure that we simplify that, but the square root of 6 is already simplified. This is, oh, I think I skipped one. Oh, I didn't. Okay, so it's asking for the radius. Before we can find the radius, it has to be in this form, okay? Your x and your y's have to be on one side, and your number that does not have an x and a y has to be on the other side of the equal sign. So when we come back here, right now, the 144 is not on opposite sides. So we're going to do that real quick. So we're going to move the -144 over to the other side and get a +144. That is your r squared. So your r is the square root of 144, which is 12. Okay, So this is asking for the center. To be able to find the center, we have to have an h and a k. To have an h and a k, then we have to have the parentheses. So we're going to do some math. There's only one x squared, so we don't really have to worry about any of that. But on the y, there's an extra y, a 7y, right? So we're going to leave a space, and we're going to move that -8 to the other side because we have to have all the constants by themselves. But because I put a line here, which you don't really understand what's going on yet with that, and I know that, we're going to put a line here because what you do to one side of an equation, you have to do to the other. So whatever I put on one blue line, I'm going to put on the other blue line. Okay, so now we're going to come back here, and we're going to put the x squared. And I want this to be a perfect square because that's what we have to have for that h and k. And to figure out, we're going to make a v. We're going to do something to the 7 and put it below it, and then after we get that answer, we're going to do something to that answer and put it up above. So the first one is take half of 7. Half of 7 is 7/2. So we're going to put 7/2 right there. Now we're going to square 7/2. And that's 49/4. And so if I add 49/4 here, then I'm going to add 49/4 here. What we did, we made a perfect square. If I told you to factor this, we would get this right here, and I needed that parentheses to be able to figure out the h and the k. And if we kept on working this, that would be 32, 781/4. If you plug that in, 8 plus 49/4, you would get 81/4. But that really not necessary on this problem because it wants the center, it wants the h and the k. And so with the x as 0 and with the y as -7/2. Last one, what's the radius? Now to do the radius, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to put the x's on one side and the y's on the same side. And since this 3 is not on the same side as the x squared, I'm going to subtract it and move it over and leave a space. I'm going to have the y here, and I'm going to move this y over, so I'm going to add it and leave a space. And then the 47 is already on the right hand side, so I'm going to keep it there. The black line is for the black line and the green line is for the green line. So we're going to do a perfect square. We're going to take half of -3 and get -3, and then we're going to square it and get 9/4. We're going to take half of 6 and get 3, and we're going to square 3 and get 9. Should have put those over here too. So 9 and 9/4. Because what you put on one line, you're going to put on the opposite line over there. Then we're going to get a calculator out because no one wants to do that. And it's 233/4. That's your standard form. So I know what my h and my k and my radius is. This is asking for radius, and so we are going to square root that. So r equals the square root of 233 over the square root of 4, which is square root of 233/2. That's your radius.